What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the latest episode of WWE Break It Down featuring Trish Stratus. So my schedule for what I was going to review here on the channel this week got a bit messed up when I realized that a new episode of Break It Down was premiering on Sunday night on the network. So today I was originally supposed to talk about the 4th episode of Season 1 of the WWE Ruthless Aggression show, which went up today, which I did watch, but that review is getting pushed to tomorrow. And then my review with Alexis of taste testing the WWE ice cream sandwiches is going to go up this Sunday for anyone who cares. So that's the new schedule. I probably should have looked into that before I announced that video would be going up next Tuesday or this Tuesday. It was supposed to go up last Tuesday. We fucked up the filming, or the filming was fine. It was the uploading that we had an issue with. But nonetheless, today we are talking Break It Down featuring Trish Stratus. Another great episode. This is a very underrated show. The last 2 episodes, I think, featured Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre talking about some of their favorite matches and moments from over the course of their WWE careers. This was equally entertaining. And the Trish Stratus documentary, by the way, for those interested, the WWE 24 they did on her, that premiered, I want to say, in December, was great. So if you haven't already checked it out, definitely do so. The first match they look at here is from the June 22nd, 2000 edition of SmackDown featuring herself, Test and Albert, TNA, against Team Extreme Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, and Lita. Trish had already known Test, I believe, from doing signings with him in Toronto. And it took a while for them to find their chemistry as a trio, but eventually they found their rhythm pretty quickly, she says. And it was always fun working with them. And she knew when she started with WWE that she could contribute physically as a performer, not just as a manager. And it took a little while for her to get that opportunity. And even though she didn't train a lot while she was on the road, she found out the day of the show, the day of the taping, that she was going to be participating in that 6-person tag team match. She's like, oh, okay. And she didn't even really have any gear. So what she's wearing in that match is something that she just so happened to have with her while traveling around that time. So she wore that as her gear. And she admitted it wasn't a wrestling spectacle per se, but it told a great story, and that marked the beginning of her iconic feud with Lita. And those two have always had their careers paralleled, and that they could always go back to it. I mean, they never actually talk about their matches later on. They talk about their feud here, which was interesting. They don't talk about their Unforgiven match or their match main eventing Raw, probably because we've heard about it so much. But she does touch upon their history here about how they could always go back to that match down the road, and how it was, dare she say, the Rock versus Stone Cold of the women's division at that point. And that she knew that she could always trust Lita whenever they were in the ring together. The next match we discuss here that they dissect is the match with Stephanie McMahon from the 2001 No Way Out pay-per-view. It was actually her first pay-per-view match, and she felt a lot of pressure as a result, because that's where people went to watch the big money matches, not stuff that you would see on ordinary TV, back when pay-per-view still meant something, at least in WWE. But she called it a great experience. Both of them gave it their all. Despite not being the greatest wrestlers in the world, they gave it a great effort. It was a full-on brawl, which really worked in their favor. And the fans really wanted to see Stephanie beat the shit out of Trish, because she was the heel at that point, Trish that is. And that brawl kind of gave that match a little extra something, she says, and that she had a big sigh of relief afterward, knowing that the match was over. They did the deed, the match was good, and that Vince kind of had a proud daddy moment, which is kind of a weird phrase for her to use, but it makes sense, because she talked about how not just with Stephanie being, her actual father, but Vince had really taken Trish under his wing when she started in WWE in 2000. And, he was there with her from the very beginning. He kind of undertook Trish as a bit of a pet project, and the match paid off. And Vince was the reason why that feud started on TV anyway, because Trish was with Vince, and obviously Stephanie being Vince's daughter, it all made sense, and that he was very happy with what they produced that night, and that through that he got, Trish that is, got to bond with Stephanie, and that friendship is still strong to this day. So then we next talk about the 6-pack challenge for the Women's Championship, the vacant Women's Championship, that is, from Survivor Series 2001. She talked about how this was the first opportunity since she had gotten to WWE for them to collect 6 girls for one Women's Championship match. And all of them were very, very good. I think it was Trish, Lita, Molly Holly, Jazz, and I forgot who else was in the matchup. But she called it the beginning of a new era. She called it the golden era. I think Ivory was in the match too. She called it the golden era of women's wrestling. and how all of them could do cool stuff. And Fit Finlay, she admitted, was at the helm of that. He was the reason why the women started to be taken more seriously by the fans, because he wanted to change the perception of what a female could do in the ring. And she talked about how the running bulldog was her original finish because it was an easy move. They kind of gave her something that she could do all the time. Didn't really take a master technician to master that move. But in that match, actually, she turned it into a springboard bulldog, and I think that's what she eventually called the Stratusfaction. So that became her new finisher after that, and it looks a lot cooler than just a normal running bulldog. And she still says that, or rather she says that it's still effective to this very day. And she got a very special reaction when she tagged into that match, because it wasn't your typical, like, oh, every woman for themselves. And it was, but I think you had to tag in and out of that match. So when she tagged in as part of the six-pack challenge, she got a big reaction, and then she got a big reaction when she won too. And she is very appreciative of that. She's always had that very special connection with the crowds, and that the fans understood that she was trying, even though her matches early on were not the greatest. She's always had their support, and she wanted that moment for them. She wanted to do it for them. And that, anyway, this match really provided the women with a platform to be more than eye candy moving forward. The next match they dissect is the match with Victoria, the no DQ match, the hardcore match from Survivor Series 2002. She admits that competing at Madison Square Garden is something very special. It was the first hardcore match for the women in over 3 years. I'm not even really sure what the last one would have been. The Good Housekeeping match, maybe with Chyna, although that was a male and a female with Jeff Jarrett, so I'm not sure if that's what they're referring to. I'm not sure what the last hardcore match would have been, but she knew it was special as soon as she saw the video package that aired for their feud before the match, and it was a very well done, put together video package. And I've seen this show so many times, I know that video package by heart, because I fucking love Survivor Series 2002. But anyway, Trish talked about how she was excited going into this match in a weird way, excited knowing that it was a hardcore match and knowing that they could do the same stuff as the guys. And it had a crazy energy to it. The fans loved it. It was very fitting, the hardcore stipulation given Victoria's crazy character at the time. And they went out there and killed it. And I think Victoria went over in the end as the new WWE Women's Champion. And the last match they talk about here is the one with Mickie James, not from WrestleMania 22, but rather from New Year's Revolution 2006. She talks about how she had held the championship by this point. It was for the women's title. She had held the championship by this point for 364 days. And she retained it on the show and ended up holding it until WrestleMania. So for almost 500 days, she was the champion, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And, yeah, so I've talked about this before, not in recent years, but when I reviewed the pay-per-view on WrestleRant, how I was like, wow, holy shit, why does no one ever really talk about her long-running reign as the women's champion? It's because she was out for a majority of it. Trish was actually injured for like 5 or 6 of those months that she was women's champion in the back half of 2005. Which is why no one really remembers that she was women's champion for so long, because it didn't really feel like one consecutive reign. She didn't really have many memorable title defenses at that point either. She had the feud with Lita early on in 2005, and that was about it. I think she faced fucking Ashley or something at WrestleMania 25, the dumb bras and panties, whatever type of match it was. But anyway, she knew that, it's insane to think about how it's insane to know, rather, that she worked hard all those days in a row, which, again, she took some time off for injury, but that's besides the point. The storyline with Mickie lasted 8 months. I don't think it's the longest story in wrestling history, as she had said here, or claimed it to be. I don't think that's the case, but it was a very long-running rivalry, especially for the women. That's not really something you see every day at this point, nowadays. But it culminated at WrestleMania. And she didn't really mind that the fans were booing her, despite the fact that she was supposed to be the babyface. She was just happy the fans cared about it. It was a very special time working with Mickie James, and she talks about Mickie James and how their kids are kind of the same age, and how I think Trish has multiple kids now, I believe, but I think Trish had her child a year before Mickie had her child, which is very cool. So they've always had their careers paralleled in that sense, and even outside of the ring. And they got to do it again at the Royal Rumble 2018, how she said that it almost didn't happen, but they fought for it, and I'm glad it did happen. I was there at that show, and I got to see that moment in person. It was a great moment, great match. And, they thought, I guess the people in the back thought that people wouldn't remember the history between Trish and Mickie, which is why they almost didn't do the spot, which is so fucking dumb, because I heard the same exact thing recently when Sheamus talked about it on The Bump, that the reason why WWE didn't want him to bring back his old entrance music is because they claimed that they didn't remember it. The people, not only that the fans wouldn't remember it, but that they themselves did not remember it. even though that was only 5 years ago. So these people in the company must have short-term memory loss or something. But anyway, she said that it was awesome to get that type of reaction for that match. And anyway, so they kind of move on from that, and to close this thing out, she talks about how it's crazy to hear the women of today talking about how they were inspired by her and her matches throughout her career, and how going into that Survivor Series 01 match, they were forging a new territory, and that fans eventually shifted from not caring about women's wrestling to caring more, maybe not as much as they do today, but definitely caring more than they did previously in like the late 90s, and they had to rid the stench of like the puppies chants and the bras and panties. I mean, they were still doing the bras and panties, let's not get it twisted. But the division was in a much better spot than it was years earlier, and I think Trish had a lot to do with that. It was a very special time. They were focused on giving fans a new way to present the females, and that they continue to grow. And that the girls that were involved in that time period, the golden era, as she calls it, continue to talk about how they were there for the beginning of that spark of the women's division. So I thought this was great, the latest edition of WWE Break It Down. If you haven't already checked it out, definitely do so. The other episodes with Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre were also very, very good. With all these people breaking down, very underrated matches of their respective careers. Again, if you told me Trish was going to be on the show, I would figure, okay, the match with Mickie when, she and Lita main evented Raw in 2004. But no, they took her debut match, the match with Stephanie, which I always completely forget about, but it's a great match, and the six-pack challenge from Survivor Series 01, and even the matches with Victoria and Mickie, but at different pay-per-views than you would expect. Yeah, just a very, very good episode. So check it out right now on the WWE Network, WWE Break It Down, featuring Trish Stratus. So like I mentioned earlier, I will be back tomorrow right here on Network and Chill, breaking down the latest episode of WWE Ruthless Aggression. The episode will be entitled The Next Big Thing. So by this point, you've already probably watched it and whatever, but I will be reviewing it right here in the channel tomorrow, which will push my review of the WWE ice cream bars, the WWE ice cream sandwiches, rather, until like this weekend. So stay tuned for that. I have other videos I have yet to post of us meeting like Keith Lee at Evolve and stuff like that, so that'll be up in due time as well. Anyway, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more original content, daily content as well. And yeah, just have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.